My roommate, accidentally, spilled wine on my shirt. Then smirked, "Guess you'll have to take it off." The wine hit my shirt at exactly 8:47 p.m., and for a few seconds, neither of us moved. Dark red liquid slowly spread across the white fabric, dripping toward the floor between us. I looked down at the stain, then back at my roommate, Maya. She was holding the empty glass in one hand, her lips pressed together as though she were trying desperately not to smile. Then she looked directly into my eyes, tilted her head, and gave me that mischievous little grin I had spent months pretending didn't affect me. She leaned against the kitchen counter and casually said, "Guess you'll have to take it off." What she didn't know was that those words weren't the beginning of something romantic. They were the beginning of a night that would force both of us to admit the feelings we'd been hiding for almost a year. If you've ever believed that kindness, second chances, and the people closest to us can change our lives in unexpected ways, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the person standing beside us every day is the person who knows our heart better than anyone else. I met Maya 11 months earlier, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when my life was falling apart. I had just lost my job at a small architecture firm after the company downsized, my savings were disappearing faster than I could admit, and my previous roommate had moved out without warning. I had 3 weeks to find a cheaper place or lose the apartment completely. That's when Maya answered my desperate post looking for a roommate. She was 28, worked as a graphic designer, loved terrible reality shows, drank too much coffee, and had an uncanny ability to turn even the worst day into something slightly less miserable. She told me on our first meeting that she wasn't looking for a perfect roommate. She just wanted someone responsible, respectful, and capable of replacing the toilet paper roll without being asked. I laughed, and somehow, by the following weekend, I had moved into the spare room. At first, we were simply roommates. We divided rent, took turns buying groceries, and occasionally argued about whose turn it was to clean the kitchen. But somewhere between late-night conversations and shared breakfasts, something changed. Maya learned that I hated thunderstorms because my mother had died during a storm when I was 17. I learned that Maya kept an old photograph of her father inside her desk drawer because he had passed away before she finished college. She discovered that whenever I was stressed, I reorganized books by color. I discovered that whenever she was sad, she baked cookies she didn't even eat. We became the kind of friends who could sit silently in the same room for an hour and still feel understood. And then there were the moments neither of us talked about. The way Maya sometimes fell asleep on the couch with her head against my shoulder. The way she would steal my hoodies and claim they were communal property. The way she'd stand too close while reaching for something in the kitchen, leaving me suddenly aware of how little space existed between us. And the worst part was that she seemed to know exactly what she was doing. Whenever I tried to create distance, she would smile as though she had caught me hiding something. I never told her how I felt because I was terrified of losing the friendship. Maya was the first person who had made my new city feel like home, and I couldn't risk turning that home into an awkward place filled with silence. Then came the night of the wine. We had both had difficult weeks, so Maya suggested we celebrate surviving them. She ordered takeout, found an old movie, and opened a bottle of wine she had been saving. I was wearing my nicest white shirt because earlier that afternoon I had received an email inviting me to an interview for an architecture position. It wasn't a guaranteed job, but it was the first real opportunity I'd had in months. Maya was genuinely happy for me. She raised her glass and told me that she knew I would get it. I laughed and told her she was being overly confident. She insisted that confidence was her responsibility and success was mine. Then she lifted her glass. Her elbow bumped the edge of the counter. The wine flew. And suddenly my white shirt looked like someone had painted it with a brush dipped in red. Maya stared at me for 2 seconds before that familiar grin appeared. She looked at the stain, looked at me, and made her teasing comment about taking the shirt off. My heart nearly stopped. I tried to laugh it off, telling her that she had officially destroyed the only respectable shirt I owned. She grabbed a towel and came closer, apologizing while trying to blot the stain. But when her fingers accidentally brushed mine, she froze. For one quiet second, we simply looked at each other. The teasing disappeared from her face. Something vulnerable replaced it. Then she stepped back and told me she was sorry. I changed in my room, but when I came back wearing an old t-shirt, the atmosphere had changed completely. The movie continued playing, but neither of us was watching it. Finally, Maya asked whether I was nervous about the interview. I told her the truth. I wasn't just nervous about the interview. I was afraid of failing again. I admitted that losing my job had made me feel worthless. I had started measuring my value by how much money I earned, how successful I appeared, and whether other people thought I was moving forward. Maya listened without interrupting. Then she told me something I'll never forget. She said that the person I was when she met me had already been enough. She said losing a job didn't make me a failure, and needing help didn't make me weak. I looked at her and asked why she always believed in me. She smiled sadly and said because someone had to. That answer stayed with me. Over the next few weeks, my interview process continued. Maya helped me prepare every evening. She reviewed my portfolio, listened to practice answers, and even made me rehearse introducing myself until I stopped apologizing for my accomplishments. Slowly, I started believing in myself again. But something else was changing too. We became more honest. One night, while we were washing dishes, Maya suddenly asked whether I had ever considered moving out if I got the new job. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She told me she understood that I might eventually want my own apartment. I asked whether she wanted me to leave. She immediately said no. Then she admitted she was scared. Not of me leaving the apartment. Of me leaving her life. For the first time, I realized the fear wasn't mine alone. I asked her why she had always teased me whenever things became too serious. She looked down at the sink and admitted that humor was how she protected herself. She had fallen for me months ago but was terrified that telling me would destroy what we had. The room became painfully quiet. I told her I had been afraid too. Afraid that if I confessed my feelings, I'd lose my best friend. Maya looked at me with tears gathering in her eyes and laughed softly. She said we had spent nearly a year being terrified of something that apparently didn't need to be frightening at all. But life rarely lets happiness arrive without testing it first. 3 days before my interview, I received an email saying the position had been postponed indefinitely. The company had lost funding, and they weren't hiring anymore. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the message until my vision blurred. The old voice inside my head returned immediately, telling me I wasn't good enough, that I was falling behind again, that Maya would eventually realize she had chosen the wrong person to believe in. That evening, I packed a small bag. I told myself I needed space. The truth was that I was embarrassed. Maya found me by the front door. She didn't yell. She didn't demand an explanation. She simply looked at the bag in my hand and asked where I was going. I told her I needed to figure things out alone. She shook her head and reminded me that I had spent months teaching myself that needing someone was weakness. Then she said she wasn't going to let me make that mistake again. She took the bag from my hand and placed it on the floor. She told me that if I wanted to leave because I didn't love her, she would accept it. If I wanted to leave because she had done something wrong, she would listen. But if I was leaving because I believed I wasn't worthy of being loved while my life was messy, then she wasn't going to stand there and watch me destroy something beautiful. I couldn't hold back anymore. I cried. Not because of the job. Because someone had finally seen the part of me I worked so hard to hide and hadn't walked away. Maya hugged me. It wasn't dramatic. There was no perfect music, no magical moment, no movie-style confession. It was simply two people standing in a small apartment hallway, holding onto each other because both had spent too long pretending they didn't need anyone. A month later, I found another opportunity. It wasn't my dream architecture firm. It wasn't glamorous. The salary wasn't impressive. But it was a beginning. I accepted it. Maya celebrated by buying another bottle of wine. She poured 2 glasses and looked at me suspiciously. I immediately told her she wasn't allowed anywhere near my white shirts. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped the bottle. Then she admitted that the wine spill hadn't actually been completely accidental. She had noticed me pulling away from her for weeks. She had been trying to find a way to break through the wall between us. The spill was supposed to be an excuse to tease me, make me laugh, and get me to stop treating our friendship like something fragile. She hadn't planned for it to become a confession. Neither had I. But sometimes love doesn't arrive with flowers or grand gestures. Sometimes it arrives disguised as spilled wine, terrible jokes, midnight conversations, shared struggles, and someone quietly reminding you that you're worth believing in. Months later, we still lived in the same apartment. Only now, there was no pretending. We still argued about dishes. Maya still stole my hoodies. I still reorganized books whenever I was stressed. She still baked cookies whenever she was sad. But now, when thunderstorms came, I didn't sit alone in my room remembering the past. Maya sat beside me. And when I was afraid about the future, she reminded me that we didn't have to know exactly where life was going. We just had to keep walking. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that failure doesn't make them unworthy, and subscribe for more stories about love, kindness, healing, and second chances. Sometimes one small act of understanding can change a person's entire life. And before we reach the ending, I want you to leave a comment with the words, "I choose second chances." Because you never know who might read your comment on a difficult night and realize they aren't alone. As for that wine-stained white shirt, I never threw it away. I kept it folded at the back of my closet. Not because of the stain. Because it reminded me of the night I finally stopped running from the possibility of being loved. The night a broken career, an uncertain future, and one supposedly accidental glass of wine taught me something I had spent years forgetting. You don't have to have everything figured out before you deserve happiness. Sometimes you simply need one person brave enough to stay when you're convinced you should leave. And sometimes, the person you thought was merely your roommate turns out to be the person who helps you finally feel at home.